What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we have the Magicsee M2 headset, the long-awaited M2 headset from Magicsee. Now, in the previous videos, we have already taken a look at the Magicsee M1 and the Magicsee M1 Pro. Now, the M1 and the M1 Pro are pretty much the same headset, except two things. One of them is being the display, which is a big improvement. This is 1440p on the Pro, and it is 1080p on the regular M1. And the other difference is that the M1 Pro had a newer software of Nibiru, which runs the newer version of Android, and it has fixed a lot of the issues and compatibility issues with this thing. That said, even though the M1 Pro was very nice and clear when it comes to lens quality and the display, colors were great and vibrant, but there was one major issue, and that these things did not have any type of adjustments whatsoever. No focus or IPD adjustments. And with that, the M2 has been released, and this is kind of a pre-production model from what I have been told, and yeah, so just take everything here as it is. So yeah, I'm the first one to actually review this thing, and yeah, let's just get right into it. So first thing you're going to notice about this thing is that the box is no longer that really nice, premium, heavy, kind of unnecessary box. Maybe it is necessary for some people if they want to resell the headsets or just want to keep the box, but that said, they did not waste any money on the box itself. Now, the price point for this thing is going to be around the same price of the M1, and it's around 150 or so US. That said, Magicsee actually has another headset that is coming up soon right after this one, and there will be the M3. And the difference between the M2 and the M3 is the display. The M2 has a 1080p display, and the M3 has a 1440p. We might get a chance to check that one out, but let's just get into this one. So that is actually pretty much of the box. You see, it is a cheap box, no money wasted. So first of all, we have a manual, just some pretty straightforward stuff. We have the strap, a 5V 2A USB adapter, and a micro USB charging cable. And both of these things are pretty nice and high quality, and it feels pretty good. So let's take this headset out and see what it looks like this time. So here it is, the design of the M2 and possibly the M3 headset. But first, let's go ahead and get some unpeel therapy going. There we go. Very nice and shiny. And we get a simple Magicsee logo right there. Very nice and shiny finish. That's probably going to get scratched up pretty easily. But that said, it might not be as easy to get scratched as the ones over here. And that is because there's actually a huge lip on each side here. So you should be good to go when you want to drop this in like that. And yeah. And that's kind of a nice way to protect this thing. But anyways, on the top here, we have a lot of new I/O ports, which is awesome. One of them being a full-sized USB port. Now, if you remember before, in the previous headsets, we actually had to use a OTG cable to get any USB compatibility. For example, if you want to plug in a mouse and start browsing and whatever. So if you want to do that, you no longer need this OTG cable. So we have a headphone jack, a door that automatically closes if you don't use it, which is kind of nice. Obviously, it doesn't clip in fully, but headphone jack, USB charging port, and a charging LED, a micro SD card reader, a mini HDMI port, as well, again, as the full-size USB port. We also have the focus adjustment dial right here that we did not have in the previous versions. And take a look at the right side, we have something pretty new and something that is very welcome. Before, we had a bunch of buttons on the top that you had to click if you wanted to navigate this without using a controller. You may prefer this, you may prefer this one. We'll see which one works better. In my experience, these ones are usually okay. In most cases, they do work pretty fine, but who knows, we'll see how this one does. We get a dedicated back button, which is nice, and we have the navigation touchpad. So we have a built-in touchpad now that you can navigate around, and I guess you tap right here to select something. And if you take a look at the left side, there's nothing going on. Take a look at the bottom, we actually have buttons, and we have the volume buttons, dedicated volume buttons, a ventilation hole, a microphone port, what it seems like, a power button, as well as the Nibiru button. And what the Nibiru button is, basically, it is a button to activate the built-in system overlay that will allow you to switch between side-by-side or regular viewing mode. For example, if you download an app from Google Play that is not supposed to be meant for VR, you can click the Nibiru, switch to the side-by-side mode, and you'll get to view that app in side-by-side, which is what makes these all-in-one headsets awesome. You can pretty much run any app you want without the need for native VR support. So for example, if you want to run something like Hulu or Crunchyroll, you can view that in VR using this thing without having to have the app support VR. If you do have an app that supports VR, you can turn it off and you'll be back to using the regular built-in VR function of the app itself. And finally, we have the facepad. Now, in the previous version, the M1 had a pretty okay facepad. The M1 Pro, the facepad was kind of cheap, but now it seems like we have something might be much better. So what we have here is a rubber structure with a facepad that is velcroed on. That feels pretty nice and what seems to be very comfortable. Now this might be easy to sweat in and it might be easy to absorb, but who knows, we'll see how that does. And we will also be testing if this thing is easy to get fogged up. Anyways, let's take the lens protectors out, and here's a quick look at the lens themselves. They look pretty interesting. They are kind of protruding. It might not work for most people, but here's a quick glasses test. Now my glasses are some pretty wide glasses, and it seems like you have support for that. We'll see how that feels as well. And it seems like we have a pretty large nose room as well as a face detector. So when you put this headset on, it will turn on, and we take it off, it will turn off the display to save battery. And if you're inside the built-in video app, it will also pause the video that you are watching. So anyways, that is the headset itself. Let me go ahead and install the strap, see how it feels, and we'll be back in just a bit. So let's go. Alright, we're back, and we are going to first be talking about how my experience has been with the software. So first of all, here are the specs for the system. They are nothing fancy, it is just running Android 5.1. So if you have ever taken a look at an all-in-one headset before, you'll notice that the layout is fairly simple. It's fairly the same, and that's pretty much the case here. Except with this one, you got 4 environments you can choose from. Anyways, if you have watched my video about the Magicsee M1, you would know what it's like. For the better or worse, it has a few changes. So when you first boot up the headset here, you'll be brought to the home screen that you see here. Starting from the top, you get the usual information of time, Wi-Fi status, battery life, SD card, headphone, and Bluetooth status. Moving on down, we got 4 permanent options of video, games, photo, and a VR web browser. Which does work, but it's unfortunately really small and doesn't make use of the full display resolution. It only uses a small section of the display, and honestly, you're better off just using your phone. Below, you will see the last 5 apps that have been launched, which is pretty useful, and a couple more quick shortcuts, which include the settings, app drawer, their own marketplace, and the favorite section. The settings menu here isn't the usual one from Android, it's their own, which has pretty much everything you need, nothing extra, nothing much, just the stuff they need like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, brightness and whatnot. The app drawer here displays all your apps as usual. The marketplace is loaded with some games and apps that they think work with this headset. They basically download off their servers and you don't need to have a login. So that out of the way, there are a couple of streaming apps that they do have. One of them is a live stream app for Chinese streamers which didn't seem to load, at least here in Canada. The other one is a collection of videos and short movies that are pulled from various platforms that you could stream. It's the type of app that you might launch once or twice and never touch again. But switching gears quickly, not all Android apps are going to run easily. You can switch non-VR apps into a side-by-side mode using the Nibiru button, which is right beside the power button, but unfortunately it did not work as well as the previous model, since here apps often crash, freeze, or go into black limbo until you exit VR mode, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, you're better off using your phone. Although some games work pretty okay, they often don't hit the 60 FPS mark, but they are smooth enough to play for a session or two. Real Racing 3 worked pretty well. If you try to run a VR game, they're most likely going to be really laggy. One thing I did try was the original Google Cardboard application, which did work fairly okay. Real Racing 3 worked pretty well with a Bluetooth controller, which was nice. Finally, let's go ahead and talk about what this headset is best used as, and again, this is the same thing that I talked about in the previous model. It is simply best used for video. 360, not so much since the FOV is basically a square, but good old regular video is best used with this headset. The video player here works flawlessly with pretty much everything, and it has all the options that you'd need to play a video. Upon opening each video, it would ask you on what type of video it is, so it can play properly, which is great. So watching movies on this thing, I would say, is pretty nice, and I have spent a good amount of time watching YouTube videos on this thing, and I did not have an issue with it, except the fact that if you take the headset off and put it back on, the video will not resume and it will just load forever, so you'll have to restart the video. So yeah, that is it for the software. It is just to give you an idea of what it's like to use, and yeah, let's just go back and talk about the hardware once more and jump into the conclusion. Alright, so I've shown you the software and pretty much everything you need to know about this headset. Although it is intended for games and other applications, in my opinion, this is only best used for video. Regular video, not VR video, since the FOV is so low. So, let's talk about the hardware and how my experience has been with the hardware itself. Now first, when you turn on the headset, on this glossy surface that is full of smudges and fingerprints, you'll get some kind of Robocop looking LED glow around here. So yeah, this thing is comfortable and I do not have any issues with the facepad or the strap, which is great. Everything about the comfort here is pretty damn good. And yes, I had to wear my glasses, and the glasses were also very nicely seated without any pressure points from the headset itself. So if you're a glasses user and you want to wear this thing, you're going to be good to go. Nose room also good enough. I have enough room to put a pinky between the nose and this area. And the lens. So the FOV here, again, I told you that it looks like a square and it's pretty low. So the lenses here are pretty clear, and they're mostly clear because the FOV is so low, so you don't actually see the edges that are distorted. The edges are pretty distorted, but you don't see those because, again, the FOV is so low. But overall, everything in the headset is pretty damn sharp. As for the display itself, it's actually pretty bright and it has some really nice colors. It's an IPS display, so it looks pretty good, and I did not notice any ghosting issues or anything like that. It was fairly good all around and good enough for video. Moving on. So if you do plan to get this, wait for the M3, see how it looks like. It has a 1440p display. I have checked out the M1 Pro, which does have a 1440p display, and the image quality is so much better with a 1440p display. The screen door effect is very visible on this thing. Now, one thing that I did have an issue with, kind of in some cases, in some applications with different lighting, is that the boxes for the lens themselves have some kind of shiny surface. So if you have a bright image on the screen, you will have some reflections on the sides. Now, you could call it immersive, or you could call it really distracting, which I would say it's pretty distracting. Sometimes you're able to see the blue glow under really low on the lens itself, the blue glow that comes on here, and that's pretty distracting. The buttons here do work pretty fine. On the top, we got the focus adjustments, which does work pretty fine. Headphone jack, USB, which is really useful because that's where I hooked up my mouse, a wireless mouse, to get things set up initially, but I didn't need that anymore since I have started using this thing, which we'll get to that in just a bit. We got an HDMI, and this time it's not an HDMI in. If you don't know, in previous models, the HDMI here was actually in. So you're actually able to hook up a PlayStation or an Xbox or a computer or any HDMI device, most HDMI devices, usually a 2.0 device, into this headset and be able to view it inside here side-by-side mode, which is pretty cool. But of course, not all of the devices were able to use that function. Many people have complained about their Sony Blu-ray players not being able to play on this thing. This time it's an HDMI out, which I did try to use for recording for some of the footage, for example the Re-Releasing 3, but as you guys know, outputting video from an Android device actually slows down the CPU, and this thing wasn't powerful enough to play a game or even the OS itself while outputting some HDMI signal to my Elgato capture card. The SD card slot is right there, you can put movies or whatever, a video, and be on the go, and the charging port right there. Now, I can't give you real stats on what the battery life is like, but it's probably similar to the previous model. You can get a movie or two with this headset, and if you disable Wi-Fi and all those things and optimize it really for watching movies, because that is really what this headset is best for. Now, let's talk about the controller that is built into the headset. This thing is horrible. It is only useful for tapping, and that's it. So when you look at something, you have a cursor in the middle of the screen, and you tap to activate something. If you want to scroll, you're supposed to do this, but that doesn't work. It is glitchy, it misfires, and it is simply horrible. Don't use it, forget about it, only use it to tap. The back button is right here, it does work pretty fine. But let me show you on the previous model here, we have proper up, down, left, right buttons. Now initially I didn't like them, but now I really appreciate these buttons. But luckily there is this thing. So this is like a $5 VR controller that is meant for VR, and it's awesome. This is my favorite controller for VR because two things. Well, a couple things actually. One of them is being cheap. It is ultra cheap. It's $5. It runs off 2 AA batteries, lasts forever. You can play games on it. You can select things. You have the home buttons, back buttons, whatever volume controls. You can switch it to a vertical mouse. You can use like this. There's a button right here. But what makes this thing awesome, and you can probably use this on a TV too, is that you can press this M button right here, which is the remote button, and it will switch it from a gamepad mode into a mouse mode, which is awesome, and it works very, very well with this headset right here. So if you want to go to Google Play and search something, you can simply click that, and this will become your cursor, and select, and then go back with a simple tap like that. There are no crazy button combinations they have to do in order to switch the mode. So that is really, really awesome. So I'll leave a link to this one. I'll leave a link to this headset. Again, the laggy footage you guys saw is because the headset is not powerful enough to run the recording software or running an HDMI out. But once more, this headset is best for video, movies, TV shows, anime, Netflix, Crunchyroll, and YouTube. And I would recommend waiting for the M3, see if it comes out, maybe it's cheaper. That is if you really want an all-in-one headset. But I will leave it to you guys. There are a lot of people out there that don't need this, but there are also some people that really look for some kind of specific device. They just want to carry one thing and wear it, have all their media on it, and just enjoy it. Maybe you travel a lot and you want a private theater, well, there you go. But yeah, that is my take on this thing. We have taken a look at this one. We didn't go too deep into this one because it was so similar to the original one, which was the M1 right here. So one last time, here they are side by side, and they were all sent by Magicsee, so thank you Magicsee. But yeah, that is my take on these things. Although they tell me that it is good for games, I don't think so. You're better off just not even playing games. Like if this is your first time getting VR, this is a video watching headset. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. get this thing if you want a private video theater, and I recommend getting the 1440p if you can afford it once it is out. Again, this is kind of a pre-production model, and I'll leave links for this one. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. So hope you guys have enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.